So let's go ahead and jump right in with the first tactical pattern, that being the double attack or fork. A double attack is arguably the most common type of tactical pattern that occurs in a chess game. Essentially, the principle is simple. You move one piece to attack two enemy pieces at the same time, thus leaving your opponent in sometimes an impossible situation when it comes to defending both pieces. Here we see a very simple version, a very commonly used version to highlight the principle of a double attack. The white rook moves to f7, attacking both the knight and the bishop at one time, and white will win material shortly. A fork is the term used to describe a double attack by either the knight or the pawn. Here we see two forks in action, with the knight having the ability to move knight to e7 check, forking the king and queen, as well as we see the pawn with the ability to move forward, forking the two knights. By definition, a double attack or a fork only works if you're attacking two pieces that cannot capture you back. For example, if we replace the queen on c8 with a knight, it would not be possible for this knight to move to e7 and fork the king and knight, as he would simply be recaptured. And so, in summary, a double attack is the act of moving one piece to attack at least two enemy pieces at one time, with the fork being a term we use to describe a double attack by either the knight or the pawn. Arguably the second most common type of tactical pattern or theme that can occur in a chess game would be a pin. A pin is the act of attacking an enemy piece. However, that piece either cannot move or does not wish to move for fear of losing a more valuable piece. The first type of pin is known as an absolute pin. That would be when a piece is pinned to the king, for it is absolutely illegal for that piece to move. We see that the bishop on b5 is also applying an absolute pin to the rook. The second type of pin that can occur in a chess game, known as a relative pin, is on display here. We see the bishop attacking the knight on f6, and though that knight might like to move under certain circumstances, it would be ill-advised to do so as long as there is a queen standing behind it. Though it is not illegal for the pinned piece to move in a relative pin, it is normally not going to happen because moving the lesser valued piece would immediately result in the loss of a greater valued piece. A relative pin can also be a very powerful tool, though it is not as forcing of a tactic as an absolute pin. Moving on, our next tactical pattern or theme under discussion is known as the opposite of the pin, that being the skewer. The skewer is the act of attacking a more valuable enemy piece so that when that piece moves, you can win or capture whatever piece is behind it, whether that be an equal or lesser valued piece. In this position, we see that both white and black have the ability to skewer the opponent, depending on whose move it was, with both sides moving the rook over to check the king, and after that king is forced to a safe square, the rook would remain on pre for the opponent to capture. To see it in action, white moves over and takes the free piece. A skewer can also occur by attacking the queen and then taking whatever piece remains undefended after the queen must find safety. Though it is arguably not as forcing of a tactic as it is to attack the king and give check, you see that it can be just as powerful to attack the queen, as either she must be lost for a lesser valued rook or find safety and allow the worse rook takes e8 checkmate. One final very common type of skewer occurs at the end of a pawn race, with both sides pushing their pawns to promote toward a queen. Here we see that though black has won the race, with an awkward king, white is able to promote and immediately apply a skewer along the diagonal, winning the undefended piece behind it. It should be noted that only the long-range pieces, being the queens, rooks, and bishops, are capable of applying pins or skewers. Let's move on. We now already begin to see tactical patterns repeat themselves, at least in some small manner. Here we're learning the discovered attack or check. In this position, white has the ability to move this bishop, unleashing a check by the rook on d1 to the king on d8, and at the same time applying an attack to the queen. By definition, this could be known as a double attack, just like the previous example we've already given. However, it's a more advanced version of the same type of theme. We are attacking two pieces at once, but we've only been able to do so in this manner because we unleash the attack of another. A discovery is the act of moving one of your own pieces to unleash a piece that otherwise would not be attacking the enemy. The most powerful type of discovery would be a double attack. As you can see here, that moving the bishop to any random square would also be a discovered check. However, finding the most valuable square for the bishop, that being one that attacks the enemy queen, makes perfect sense. A discovered check or a discovered double attack is one of the most powerful types of tactics you can play in chess. And if a discovered attack or a discovered check is one of the most powerful types of attacks or tactics you can play in chess, you could argue that discovered double check is the most powerful move possible in any given chess game. Here, this position is the Venus flytrap, one of the most famous mating nets known in a chess game. White begins by playing knight to f7 check, and after the king moves to g8, the most important part of why we're showing this example becomes clear. The knight moves to h6, releasing check on the king. What should be noted is that both the queen and the knight are possible captures for black. However, it is impossible to capture two pieces at once. So despite the fact that both of white's pieces are hanging per se, black is unable to do anything but move the king. A double check is the most powerful move in chess because it leaves the king to his own devices always. He's unable to move to f8 because of checkmate on f7, and quickly if he moves to h8, we see the climax of the Venus flytrap mating net, with white sacrificing the queen and delivering a smothered checkmate on f7. Again, the main point of this is not how practical in nature the theme is, nor is it really even the mating net. The idea is to show you how powerful the act of playing a discovered attack or a discovered check tactic can be, with the double check being the most powerful form of a discovered attack. Again, we see it end in black's demise. Strategy was perhaps defined best by former world champion and father of the Soviet chess school Mikhail Botvinnik, when he said, "Tactics are the servant of strategy." What he meant precisely is that though tactics make up for 90% of chess, and you will need to use tactics in every critical moment, you will receive good tactics by understanding the strategical nature and the long-term features of every position you play. Like discussing all the tactical themes, it would be impossible for us to lay out every strategical concept within the remaining few minutes of this video. So instead, we'd like to point out what you need to be aware of when you play your games, as far as what the long-term and basic strategical features are of just about every chess game you play. So, your general goal in the beginning of the game, your first step toward having good strategy, is to develop your pieces into the center. As we pointed out, all of your pieces will do better when they are on their most active squares, and active pieces lead to good tactics. So, your first strategical tip is a very general one, and it requires no movement of the board. Put your pieces on good squares. Particularly, as discussed, the center is arguably the best place for all of your pieces. And once your pieces are put in the center, there's typically two lists of criteria that you can weigh to decide on the value of your pieces. How many squares does the piece attack/control, and is the piece safe? This being a great example of two pieces that started out on equal footing, both valued at 3 points, though the knight is clearly the superior piece in this situation, having dominated the center. And here would be a second example of two pieces that would start out of equal value, though the white rook, having dominated the 7th rank, targeting all of black's pawns potentially and keeping the king at bay, is clearly the superior piece to the black rook on f8. Essentially, if the piece is perfectly safe and controls up to its maximum number of squares, you have that piece on its best square. You're executing good piece strategy.